At any given time, so at any given time of our daily experience, there is always a general, well, there's always a feeling present, but by that it's meant the quite the general nature of the feeling. That's what fundamentally determines how we feel at the time, at that particular time. Often people confuse and tend to conflate feelings with perceptions, whereby things that they can observe in their body, like sensations and various sort of manifestations, they regard those things as feelings. They say, oh, I feel this in my back, or that's mistaken actually. Feelings are felt, perceptions are perceived. So if there's anything that you perceive, or rather there's any phenomena manifesting in your body on account of your feelings, well, if it's in your body, it's perceived on the level of the sense of touch, usually. So feelings are always felt. That's why you can have more particular feelings, more general feelings, but doesn't matter, wherever your attention ends up, it's going to be that which is felt. So you can have a particular annoyance, for example, felt unpleasantly, but on a more general level, you are still actually in a good mood. So the more general feeling that is simultaneously present with this particular unpleasantness that you might experience through some annoyance, that more general feeling is enduring there as such, and you could regard it as pleasant because you're in a good mood. Consequently, you can sometimes be in a unpleasant general feeling can be present, enduring. You can be in a bad mood, loosely speaking. And then even the most pleasing immediacy that you might experience and feel agreeable will not necessarily uproot your bad mood, because the mind is anchored in the general feeling that at this time it's unpleasant and it's enduring on its own. So no amount of pleasant distractions in front of you can take your mind away from it. In that sense, on a particular level, you are experiencing agreeable feelings, but on a more general level, a very disagreeable mood still persists. That's usually when people turn to sensuality and distraction, because trying to override, trying to bury that general unpleasant feeling through engagement with immediate pleasure. That's why the Buddha said, when a person doesn't know the escape from suffering, the first port of call is sensuality. They turn to sensuality because they don't know any other means of dealing with unpleasant feeling that affects them. But as we've seen as I spoke in many other videos, and as you can see in the suttas, sensuality just makes the problem worse, because it makes you ignore the problem, pretend there are no symptoms and issues, while the whole thing is just getting worse because of that. Which means next time you're affected by unpleasant feeling, you won't even necessarily need to require a seriously unpleasant mood. Any displeasure will be enough to turn you to sensuality, because the mind is becoming so weak and trying to get rid of the discomfort at any cost as soon as possible. So that's what I mean by mood. I don't mean like, oh, you're moody, or I feel like this, or today. I mean like a general feeling present. So that's not it's not a matter of what you think your mood is. It really comes down to just checking, looking inwardly or backwardly or peripherally, and see what is the general feeling of the situation. Is it agreeable or disagreeable, or is it neutral? It can be either of those. And that's where the mindfulness needs to become anchored, and that's where it needs to start to develop discernment. Because that's the nature of the feeling, to be present in the most general manner. And if we don't know escape from it at that level, if we are bound by it at that level, means it will be then affecting our actions aimed at the immediacy of our experience, at the what we call before the foreground, at the objects of your attention. And that's why when people don't acknowledge this, are not aware of it, they end up sort of acting habitually, either towards sensuality or ill will, all on account of being affected by the very general feeling that they don't know escape from. So the most the coarse example would be, for example, when somebody is in a bad mood over something that they had no power over, they couldn't change it, and then they go and take it out on somebody else. Take out their pain on somebody else, and that requires almost a magical belief to think that these two things are connected, that you can really alleviate the pain and discomfort you feel on a general level of mood, of mind, that you can alleviate that by kind of lashing out on the particular level. In the same sense, it requires a magical belief or a gratuitous assumption to believe that you can overcome that pain by replacing it with pleasure on a more particular level. The thing is, particular level remains particular and general remains general, which means you can invest all of your attention and intention to the particular sensuality and act accordingly and chase it and get it and experience it. But that makes no difference to the nature of the general feeling. It might help you forget about the nature of the general feeling, and then that general feeling will cease on its own, because that's what they do. And then you will believe that it ceased because of your sensual acts, but actually it didn't. All you need to do is just ask yourself, are you still liable to any future unpleasant moods and unpleasant states of mind on that general level? The answer will be yes, which means then sensuality doesn't do anything, cannot do anything to that domain except distract you from the problem. So for as long as you resort to looking away from the problem as a way of solving the problem, well, you are perpetuating the problem and making it worse. So that's why sensuality and ill will need to be restrained beforehand, and that also then means you limit the scope of unwholesome actions that you can still give into when you're affected by the general mood. Because you won't know the escape overnight. So the thing is to recognize that, but to know what not to do on account of unpleasant arisen feelings. Then gradually the mind will stop resorting to these quick sort of distractions and lookaways and ignorings of this problem, and it can, well, it will leave itself no choice but to look at it correctly. And look at it correctly is basically, if you stop acting out of that general feeling and practice mindfulness of it and allow it to endure for whatever it is, no matter how many days it could last, the bad mood, doesn't matter, or a good mood, that doesn't matter either. You allow it to be without interfering, without trying to get rid of it, and then eventually you will have to see that it has arisen on its own, and because of that it will cease on its own. Because of that it cannot be yours, because its origin didn't come from you, thus you're not its creator, you're not its owner. Which means whatever has arisen, for that very reason, it's impermanent, it cannot be owned. It will change. And when that's fully understood, then no mood, no feeling, no matter how general that feeling is, can affect the mind. And there is absolutely nothing unwholesome left there, because the entire domain of unwholesomeness was a result of ignorance, of not knowing where the problem was, and then trying to solve it or distract yourself from it by looking at the wrong place and engaging with wrong things. So once that problem has been genuinely uprooted, as we just explained, then well, there's nothing you have to do on account of it.